Thank you for tuning into our seller interview series. Up today, we've got a 2-site e-commerce business for sale in the emergency preparedness niche. Created in April 2015, this business makes $3,891 per month in net profit, and the listing number for this business is 41044. We do these interviews to give potential buyers more information about both the seller and the sites they're looking to purchase. We hope these insights are helpful for you in making a buying decision. We've got the seller with us today to go through the business and cover everything from niche selection to traffic and monetization. Thanks for coming on, Carl.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
How are you doing today?
Oh, not too bad.
How is it looking up there in British Columbia, other than the wildfires right now?
Yeah, well, thankfully I'm on the coast, but pretty smoky here on the coast right now. But aside from that, not too bad. At least the weather's nice, but don't get the sun much through all the smoke.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you are doing well, and I hope that the smoke clears up.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I live in Florida, and there were quite a few fires in early spring and such. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that all gets taken care of. My
thoughts and prayers are certainly with our friends and family up in the interior right now. So Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly scary, but... Well, before I get into asking you the questions, I want to give a quick summary of the business. Again, it was built in April of 2015. It has a monthly revenue of $17,655, expenses of $13,765, which makes for a net profit of $3,891 on a 12-month average. Included in the sale of this business are the 2 main sites, 3 additional domains, Facebook page with about 5,600 followers, Twitter account with about 2,100 followers, an email list with about 2,200 subscribers, and site content and files. Inventory is not included in the list price, but further details can be provided to active depositors. Carl, can you give us a little bit about your background in building and running online businesses?
Yeah, so I got started as an entrepreneur very early on. I ran a physical poker tour that ran out of bars around the BC Lower Mainland. That was while I was going to school in Ontario. That was kind of my first real taste of running a business with any kind of online aspect. And I had to learn on my own because I was, didn't have the budget to hire someone to build a website for me. So I had to learn it from scratch on my own, outside of the little things I'd learned in university, because I was taking marketing as a field of study. And we did cover a little bit of graphic design, a little bit of web design, but nothing major. So I kind of expanded on that to create that business. Shortly after university, I started a coffee and tea house company out there, and we had about 3 locations at one point. And we went on to, sell those off to another company. For privacy's sake, I can't really relinquish the information on that. But I then made the move back here to the BC Lower Mainland, me and my fiance at the time. And I started working for a cruise agency in Cole Harbour called Cruise Connections, and I was their webmaster for 2.5 years. And kind of wrote their book on how to be basically as their first web guy that they brought in. So I wrote the book on how to do it at that company. Now they're one of the largest agency side companies in North America from a single office, and the envy of the cruise industry in terms of their ability to generate sales online. And I was at the forefront of that strategy. So when I decided to go solo and go on my own, I started creating online businesses, and then that's where this one in particular was one of the ones I created, and it kind of took off. So
if you were studying marketing at the university, where did you learn the skills required to build online businesses?
Well, thankfully, there's this great resource out there called YouTube. So I just self-taught myself how to do it all and learn code and learn everything. So I just did it from scratch. And, when Cruise Connections gave me the chance to come in, they had a very complex structure there. So I had to learn a lot of different types of code to compete in that environment. I had to learn different ways of managing a website and a database. So, I was able to learn that while being paid to do it. So that was pretty nice, a good opportunity for me, and it allowed me to garnish a lot of information. But yeah, kind of spent, $50,000 on that university degree, but where I really did my learning was, with about 500 hours on YouTube. So
that's funny how it all works out.
Yeah, well, we live in an information age where it's all out there for people to learn if they have the willingness to do so.
Yeah, that's cool that you're able to self-teach yourself and then become this prominent figure in growing this other agency in the online space. So it sounds like you had the deal with the coffee houses and then you had this agency job. Where'd you get the idea to come up with this business?
Well, back in 2014, we had a bit of a natural disaster here on the coast. It thankfully didn't cause any loss of life or anything, but it definitely was the impact of it was felt around our province and in the Lower Mainland. And I remember the day after it occurred, I was going for coffee with a friend of mine, and I said to him, man, a guy could make a killing going door to door selling emergency preparedness supplies today. And, we both had a good chuckle, a good laugh about that. But, the idea was always in the back of my head that this industry was underappreciated in the Lower Mainland, and especially considering the looming threats we constantly have of natural disasters and things of that nature. So I saw the opportunity back then and ended up doing anything with it for a while. And pardon me, that was in 2012. I apologize, not 2014. It wasn't until 2014 when I actually did something about it. But in 2012, that was when the idea first kind of came to be.
So you mentioned that you go door to door. Is that how you primarily make money?
No, I actually don't go door to door at all. That was just the initial thought of the business. As a matter of fact, one of the statements I make on my site is, we're going door to door in the Lower Mainland to educate people about this industry. But the reality is that's always been an option that's been available. And I've always thought that after something occurred, that might be a good way to get supplies into the hands of people. But that's never really been something I've been able to do, because when the business has been really busy, I haven't been able to do that. I haven't been able to keep up with that demand as it is. So just the online space has been more than enough to generate enough sales. So I've never really gone down that road.
So you primarily make your money by selling your product online?
That's 100% where we make our money, yeah.
Okay. So how is the trajectory looking, from when the business started for the first few months to now?
Well, it was a little slow getting going at the start because nobody really knew who we were. Facebook ads were in their infancy and weren't as effective as they are today, in my opinion. Google AdWords, we definitely had and I always say we, that's just me. I'm a one-man show. I just say we as the company as a whole, right? But the AdWords strategy really paid off early, and we were able to get a lot of traffic to the site using AdWords and doing it at a really low cost per click. And that was the initial competitive advantage we had in the industry. And I continued to grow the business from there. But where we really got lucky was in August of 2014, there was a windstorm that had happened that generated a lot of buzz in the Lower Mainland, and people were without power for several days there. And so our business kind of took off from there. But where the opportunities still lie are certainly in that online environment. But it wasn't until there again another disaster did occur in December of that year as well, in late December. And that one was more specific to our niche, and everything took off from there. And we were partnering with a couple of mom blogs to get our product out there. They're doing a product review, and they really took it as, okay, well, I'm going to get out there, I'm going to write about this now and get it out to my readers. And it just blew up. And from there, it hasn't slowed down really since. What I've been trying to do this year is, because we spent so much money promoting and trying to get new business using Facebook ads. Now I'm trying to scale back the advertising and just grow off of organic results online and referrals. And that's what we've been doing. So trying to maintain around the same sales. Sales were down slightly this year simply because we didn't have that same natural disaster rate at the start of the year, right at the end of the previous year. So it's hard to compete with that in years where we don't have that happen. But that could certainly occur at any time. So it's just being prepared, trying to have inventory in place in case that occurs, because we were back ordered for about 2.5 months following that. So we didn't even scratch the surface of what we could have done in sales after that, right? But certainly there's opportunities to continue to grow. And where I've seen a lot of advantage this year is I know what times a year are busy and what times a year are not. So there is a cyclical effect to the business. So now that I've got that ironed down, I can be more efficient about my advertising and when to spend it. And that's creating a better profits for less work, in my opinion.
If you're just now feeling like you have the cycle down and you feel like you can be more efficient with everything, why are you selling the business now?
I'm selling it now because I see a lot of opportunity to expand into the States with this, and I kind of have a plan in place for that. but that's going to require a lot of effort on my end to do that. And I have a new business that I've just recently started in the pet industry. And I've been trying to get into that industry for a long time because I think it's a very lucrative industry and it's a global product and it's already taking off in leaps and bounds. So I'm starting to have a hard time keeping up with both businesses at this point. So I'm trying to simplify my business portfolio a little bit because I do have several online businesses. And this one takes up the most time aside from this new business that's now coming in. So I want to try and focus more on that new business. And I see so many opportunities with this existing one that I'd hate to see just sitting back and watching it fade into just an annual revenue stream, which I could certainly do and hire some people to do it. But I'd rather see a new owner come in and take it to where it could be so that I can look down the line and say, I had a part in starting that and I can feel some pride about that, knowing that I created that and that I guided someone towards the direction they needed to take it to make it into a North American-wide powerhouse.
So you mentioned that right now you're only selling in Canada, but the option is in place. The plan is there to expand into the United States. Is that correct?
That's correct. And not only that, what makes the American plan so lucrative, I'd say, is that it would be a lot more streamlined, a lot less owner involved, and I have it all planned out. So it's something that the new owner can certainly inherit, and I want them to work towards that. So I do want to help them move in that direction. So I've already got the contacts necessary to do it and everything. It's just a matter of executing it at this point.
Mm-hmm. And you, just clarifying, you would pass those contacts along to the new buyer?
I would, yes. And that's something I need to discuss with the new buyer, though, and make sure that I would expect some form of compensation for the idea should they choose to go ahead with it, simply because, the sale of the business is for the business as it stands now. And the sale price has been based on sales figures up to this point. So when you're looking at future considerations, opportunities, I do feel that some sort of compensation is in order for that.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So is there anything that you've learned from growing this business that you'll apply to future businesses like your new pet business?
Absolutely. I definitely think it's important to grow early and then create efficiencies in your marketing as you go along. One thing that I've learned is even if you can just break even on your marketing, like if you're spending marketing, it's not costing you any money, you're making enough to cover the costs with your sales. I do it at the start because the more customers you get at the beginning, the more customers you'll have midway through, and those will be organic referral customers. So it ends up paying off in the long run. As long as you're not losing money on marketing, it's always good to continue to push it as far as you can without obviously bankrupting your business. But that's the one thing I've personally learned and that I will certainly apply to all my businesses going forward.
Is there something that you've learned that you will not be applying to future businesses because it didn't work?
So, yeah, well, with that being said, not necessarily on this particular business venture that I've noticed this, but it's one of the reasons why I'm a one-man shop to this point, is in a previous business I ran, I learned a valuable lesson about bringing people in to partner with and then giving them a little too much trust and and then they come around and create their own company and just snake you, right? So I've learned a lesson about that in previous businesses, not so much with this one, but I guess that's the point I'm bringing up with this business is I tried to keep it just me and try and simplify the business and create efficiency wherever possible so it could just be me so I didn't have to rely too much on bringing someone in to partner with or to help with the business.
In respect to that answer, do you have plans, so after this business is sold, do you have plans to ever return to this niche?
Well, no, and I have mentioned in the sale of the business that I will be signing a non-compete agreement as well with that. So, no, I have no intention of returning to the niche. I want to make sure that the new owner is set up to succeed to the point where no one would be able to compete with them in the future, in my opinion. So that's my goal with the sale of the business is not only to sell it, but I'm selling it because I want it to be in good hands and I want to be able to look at it 10 years from now and say I had a part in building that, right?
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So where does all of the traffic come from? Is it organic or is it social media, referral? Where's it coming from?
It's certainly a combination of everything, but at this point right now, this is our slow time of year, and it's mostly coming from organic traffic. So just people online. we rank number one in the targeting search terms that we want to use. And I kind of created an SEO strategy that's geo-targeted that I've never seen any other business implement before. And this was actually my test for that concept. I'd come up with it and said, okay, I'm going to test it on one of my businesses. And I tried it on this one and it worked. So now I've kind of implemented that on all my businesses and it works really, really well, to the point where it's not just popping up as the search term. It's also saying now serving that specific city that that person searching lives in. So it makes it seem very local no matter where they are, and certainly increases the click-through rates to the site. And then once people are on the site's easy to navigate, easy to purchase through, and that generally sells them on it right there. So it's just removing those barriers that prevent people from becoming a sale in the e-commerce environment.
We mentioned before that you have the Facebook and the Twitter accounts. How pertinent have those been in your growth?
Well, I'll tell you, the verdict's out on Twitter, right? There was a lot of time spent in growing that Twitter account using a resource called Tweepy. That's doing a lot of shared, basically following people in hopes of getting return followers, targeting people who have followed businesses similar to yours or with a similar topic or industry. And I'll post something on Facebook and then Twitter, and I'll maybe get like 5 or 6 likes on the Twitter side and 5 or 6 retweets. But Facebook's where we really get most of our traffic and most of our sales from, because I'll post something on Facebook and it'll just go viral. People share it, and it's just anything related to our emergency preparedness industry, and people spread it like wildfire. It's incredible how fast. There was one, I also use a blog on the site itself, the e-commerce store. Shopify has that feature in their stores. And I had one post there that I had done there again about a cyclical emergency preparedness event that occurs in our region here in the Lower Mainland every 14 months. And that just took off. Like, it had, in the end, 500,000 views, had thousands of shares, thousands of post interactions. I mean, that was the most viral thing I've had happen, and I only spent like a few $100s promoting it using Facebook ads, and to get 500,000 views was just incredible. So it was, really, it shows that opportunity is there every 14 months to have a repeat article about the same topic, and that generates an enormous amount of traffic. It's just incredible.
Do you have any theories about why Twitter did not work for you when Facebook was so successful?
I think the Twitter ad platform is pretty poor. It's just not developed well. The Facebook ads platform is absolutely genius in the way that you can drill down and target people and really optimize using custom audiences and things of that nature. The way you can really optimize your ads using Facebook ads, it's incredible. Targeting people by interest. And I know Twitter, to an extent, you can do the same thing. But I do find that people who are on Twitter, I don't feel like they spend the same amount of time or the same amount of effort on Twitter as they do on Facebook. A lot of people, it's like a second life on Facebook. So, they buy from Facebook, they read their news from Facebook, they do all these practical things on Facebook, whereas Twitter, it's just, I post a tweet about something I did today or whatnot. And I just feel like Twitter's just not as, and here I'm bashing Twitter, but I just don't feel like it's as good as Facebook, not even close in terms of being a functional social network for people.
You had mentioned before that you run a blog on one of the 2 main e-commerce sites, and how often is content published to that site?
In absolutely no regularity. It's just when I have something to write about, I write about it. It's just more of I'm not trying to force content onto there. That was ultimately just created when I was trying to do this. Well, I mean, I was posting on it when the business first started and it wasn't getting any traction. And then in February of this year, we went through that cyclical event that I mentioned, and I posted that post and we got 500,000 views, and that was just insane. And the business that was generated from that was great, right? So, and that's relatively cheap advertising. So certainly something I've wanted to use, but I only use it when there's something to report or something to talk about. I don't want it to be forcing content down people's throats, because then it's not going to resonate, and then it's just going to fall flat, and it's a waste of time.
Yeah, you just write about, things you're passionate about, and I'm sure that comes across in the posts.
Yeah, and it has to be things that are passionate to this industry in specific, right? I'm not just writing about my day that day or something like that. It's writing about important information and doing some research and actually writing an educated article about the industry. And then people respond to that because it shows that you have a little bit of expertise in what you're selling and in the industry that you're in.
Can you take a second and detail exactly the structure of the two e-commerce sites? Like, why not a single e-commerce site? What's the purpose of having two?
Well, and that's the thing. I don't really see it as two e-commerce sites. I know that they are technically two e-commerce sites, but I see it as one e-commerce site and then a site of squeeze pages. And for those that aren't really familiar with that term, squeeze page is just a page that's catered to a specific audience to drive organic search traffic. And what I've done with that is I've created this, basically it's a one-page site that has exact same content. The only thing that changes from page to page is the geo-targeted aspect, so the actual cities that I'm targeting. And so when it's submitted to Google, it appears as 150 pages, which Google says, okay, well, that's more than 5 or 6 pages. That's a legitimate website. And they index your site, and then they index it based on, want to make sure you have a nice balance of your keyword, so you're keeping that below 3-4% keyword occurrence across the page, but also enough occurrences of it, more than say 7 or 8, that it becomes a prominent keyword, and that's how you get ranked organically. So this is just very basic SEO, but then also adding that geo-targeted aspect to it has been very, very well received by the customers, because there again, it gives it a very local aspect to the site. So that one site is based on that, but then the second site is a Shopify store, right? And the Shopify store allows you to embed buy buttons on any other website. So I've simply embedded that functionality into the squeeze pages so that you can shop on that page directly as well. So it's not one or the other, having a click through to the other, you can do both. So technically, in my opinion, there's one e-commerce site, and then there's a series of squeeze pages to drive organic traffic.
Would you help a buyer set up and continue to maintain the squeeze pages with the geo-targeting?
It's already there. It's you don't have to maintain it at all. I mean, if you need to update the information, it's very, very easy to use, because I've used some PHP include files, and I'll show them how to use that. And it's actually really easy. You go into the file directory, you can see that if you want to update the page, you just update in one spot, and it'll update all 150 pages, right? So it's very easy to maintain and update. And it doesn't really require any updates. Just depends on if they're going to make changes to the structure of the business. And I can certainly help them adjust that content. That's no problem. Yeah.
So the single e-commerce business, as you see it, how is that handled? Do you drop ship, or is it an FBA? How do you handle the e-commerce side of it?
Well, I personally ship it myself, and that's for orders outside of the Lower Mainland. Inside the Lower Mainland, I do offer free hand delivery, and that is a service that people can select. From a business standpoint, it does work out to being cheaper for me to hand deliver than it is to ship during busy times of year. So during slow times of year, I do try to call the customers and say, do you mind if we ship it by Canada Post? Because we just simply wouldn't have enough orders to fulfill on any given day to make a delivery map that would be efficient and more cost effective. So it's actually cheaper just to ship them. I've been trying to move in the direction of just doing more shipping. And I think that if I continue with the business personally, I think I would have to move in that direction, because I just wouldn't have the time to commit to doing the hand deliveries. But it is a component that customers do love. So although I don't think there would be a big decrease in sales or conversion rate over changing it to shipping, I do know that people refer their friends a lot based on the hand delivery concept. They're very impressed by that. So I'm not sure what the impacts would be of doing that on a full scale. My calculations would show that it wouldn't be overly impactful to switch to a completely shipping model. But yeah, it's hard to say. In terms of the shipments that I do, I have a daily pickup essentially, or every couple of days I have a pickup with Canada Post. They come right here to the house, pick it up from me. I just bundle it up and ship it. It's not too much work to ship the orders.
Is it something that you're making yourself, or do you have a supplier?
I have a supplier that supplies me with the supplies. And initially, the arrangement I had with them was that they would build the kits and I would simply deliver them to customers. But then what ended up happening was I kind of outgrew that arrangement. So to the point now where I'm their largest wholesale account, and they just don't have the manpower to commit to building the kits for me. And at the same time, the US dollar went up in relation to the Canadian dollar. The Canadian dollar went down quite a bit. And so their costs per unit were going up. So we had to make some changes in the arrangement of our business model so that they could be more cost effective, to make sure that they're making money on their end and that I'm still maintaining my margins, because I didn't want to lose my margins, even if it took doing a little more work. So that's when I kind of created the home-based business of creating the kits and then shipping them. And it's very efficient the way in which I do it, and it's very time effective. Like the time to build a kit, when you average it out over all of the supplies that you do and how you bundle it, takes maybe a minute or two to build one, say, 2 or 4 person kit, right? So, and when you consider the profit per kit, that's pretty good time usage.
Carl, what do you think are some of the biggest risks associated with this business that a prospective buyer should be aware of?
I think there's always the risk that, and I've already seen it, there are existing businesses in this industry. I've targeted a very specific niche, and I've kind of cornered that niche, and buyers would have to deposit to find out more information about that. But, there's always that risk that the other companies will simply follow suit and try to adopt the same strategies that I've used. So the barriers to entry in terms of the strategy of hand delivery and these components and tracking the expiry dates, which is, to me, seems like a no-brainer. I'm surprised these other companies haven't done that, because that's a source of repeat business. I don't know why you wouldn't track the expiry dates in your kits. But I was the first company to do that, and that was part of it, right? So the biggest risk is obviously the competitors have an opportunity to get involved in the industry. There are others out there doing this, and although I've targeted a very specific niche and I've cornered that niche, where my biggest advantage is and where the biggest barrier to entry is the organic search result aspect. Nobody's going to be able to compete with that. It would take them years to take that crown away from me at this point. So, and then, to be honest with you, the strategy I'm using is very sophisticated. It's not out there in any other capacity. So the new owner of the company is going to inherit a new way of doing business. So if they have other businesses that they want to use, that they want to enhance their organic search results on, in my opinion, the valuation of this business, just grabbing that piece of information is worth the money they're spending, in my opinion. So when you talk about risks involved, I've discussed with some off-the-record legal counsel. Some friend of mine is a lawyer, and I spoke with him with regards to liability concerns within this industry. And there's no precedent for any liability concerns whatsoever. So it's a very clean, easy business. The only risk factors would be what the competitors are going to do. But if you keep your finger to the pulse, you can get ahead of them and just stay ahead of them, and they'll be chasing their tail trying to catch up to you.
Can you describe how much work you do for the business each week? You said way earlier in the call that the reason you wanted to sell this business is because it's quite a bit of work and you want to devote that time to your new business. How much work and what kind of work do you do?
Yeah, and I did want to expand on that. So I'm glad you asked that question, because it's not a lot of work in the way it is now, especially if I were to scale it into a point where it's just shipping everything and no hand delivery. During the slow times of year, I'm maybe spending maximum 20 hours a week working on this, but it's the busy times of year, and that busy time of year is, October through December, right? And then that 14-month cycle every year, which rotates, obviously. So next year, that'll be in, I believe, April, May. So, and then we have a couple of other times a year that do play into it, like an emergency preparedness week and some things like that the government is encouraging people to get prepared during those times of year. So then all that information will be passed on to the new owner, obviously. But what I find is that when it's busy, I can be spending up to 40 hours a week on the business. But even still, like in the busy times of year, I'm probably still only spending about 30 hours a week on it. So it's better in the busy times because I'm getting more bang for my buck. But the problem is the new business that I've started is setting up to be extremely busy October through December. So suddenly I'm going to be in a situation where I'm going to be pulling 60-hour, 70-hour, 80-hour weeks, just to keep up with both businesses. So that's where it becomes a concern. But that's why would have to scale it back to a strictly shipping model in order to keep up. But should I do that, just scaling it back to a shipping model as opposed to a hand delivery model, you're only looking at, I would say 10, 15 hours a week during the slow time of year, and probably 20, 25 hours a week during the busy time of year spent working on it. incredible how efficient it can be. The only thing that can be an issue is if there are stockouts at the supplier. So the more inventory you carry on hand, the better. But you also want to be careful because some of it does expire. So you need to make sure that you're not carrying so much that your expiry dates start to decline, because then the quality of the product, the perception of the quality of the product goes down if people don't get that full 5-year expiry date on that product. So that's another big component, is the more inventory you can keep a nice balance in there, the less workload you'll have, because now you're not calling customers to explain to them why their product's not coming and that it's back ordered. Because that's probably the biggest time consuming factor, is if you have a back order, if you're back ordered on anything, then you have to contact the customers. That's when things start to slow down and become inefficient. So if you could really create an efficient model where you have a nice balance of inventory, shipping everything, I mean, this could be a business that requires very, very little effort for the amount of money it makes.
Mm-hmm. And with that little effort, are there any special skills or requirements that are needed just working within this niche?
No, not at all. I got into this niche with no experience in it whatsoever. I just saw an opportunity in it and went after it. So all the online side of it is already set up. So that's not going to even require any coding knowledge whatsoever. I mean, there's a bit of maintenance involved, but they can certainly work with me on helping them with that, and or even any other web designer they want to work with. It's a very easy to use system, and it's configured so that anyone could operate it with any limited amount of knowledge within that. But if you just left it the way it is, it could stay the way it is for years and never need to be updated. So there's a little bit of education involved with how to build the product and how to bundle the product for optimum customer perception, but that can be taught very quickly, very easily, and all you need is an example of it, which you'll always have to show it.
So, Carl, it's nearing time to wrap up here, but before I let you go, just some last-minute questions here. You've already mentioned that you'll sign a non-compete. How much support are you willing to offer buyers? Meaning, 30 days of email support or, answering questions or whatever, helping with the transition.
I believe what I've quoted is 30 days of Skype or email support, but I'm happy to extend beyond that. Like I said from the start, I'm selling this because I want to see this business continue to grow, and I want to see it become something greater than it is. And I want to be able to look back and say I was a part of that. I'm certainly willing to help out. I think after a certain point, though, I am a marketing consultant on the side as well. So it is one of those things that after a certain point, if they do need help with it, then I can do that from a consulting capacity, but that would also require them to pay me to do that. But I certainly have no problem offering support probably through the first 90 days, I'd say, just because that brings them. It really depends on when the business sells, right? But at this point, if they bought it now, I would probably be more willing to provide them 90 days support, simply because that would take them into a busier time of year and they would encounter maybe some of the difficulties they could possibly encounter, and I could help them answer that. Whereas if the business didn't sell till, say, January or something of that nature, I'd probably be more willing to only offer 30 days support, simply because the extra 90 days is not going to be a benefit to them.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Makes sense. You want to get them through the next few months here.
Well, and that's just it. I think if someone's going to buy this business, they'd be absolutely silly not to buy it before the busiest time of year, which is coming up in 30 days here, 30 to 60 days. So I want to help them into that, so I'd be willing to help them right through till the end of October, just because October's one of, if not the busiest months they're going to have.
Mm-hmm. So, Carl, obviously, what we all want is that we get 100% cash offer of what we're looking for. But if that didn't happen, would you be open to, a split or an earn out, say like 70% up front, 30 on closing or something like that?
If I'm getting paid in installments, I may as well just keep the business for myself, hire somebody to run it, and just run it through my busy time of year. I'll make the same amount of money. So there's really no advantage to me to do that. What I'm trying to do is allow myself to spend my time on my new business and maybe reinvest some of that capital into the new business by selling this existing one. So if it's not an upfront amount, then no, I'm not really interested in that.
Okay. So before I let you go here, I just want to give a quick summary of the business again. The business was built in April of 2015, has a monthly revenue of $17,655, has expenses of $13,765 for a net profit of $3,890 on a 12-month average. Included in the sale of this business are the 2 main sites, 3 additional domains, Facebook page with about 5,600 followers, a Twitter account with about 2,100 followers, an email list with about 2,200 subscribers, and site content and files. Inventory is not included in the list price, and further details can be provided to active depositors. Carl, before I let you go here, what is your best 30-second pitch on why someone should purchase this business?
Well, I had a professor in university who was also he worked as a funeral director. And he said, Carl, you're getting in the wrong stream with marketing. Come work as a funeral director because people always spend money on dying. And I said, well, you know what? I've learned that the one thing people spend more money on than dying is not dying. And emergency preparedness is that industry in a nutshell. So the growth opportunities are endless. We're moving into the American market. If I can do this in just one province in BC, imagine what we can do in California, Oregon, and Washington. So.
Great answer. Thank you so much for coming on here today. It was certainly a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, my pleasure was all mine. Thank you.
So if you're watching this on YouTube and want more info, the link will be below the video that will take you to this marketplace listing. If you're watching this on the listing site and want more information, become a depositor today. All you have to do is click the button, Make a Refundable Deposit, and you will be given everything you need to review this business. Have a great day.